Start streaming. Alright, everybody. Hey, guess what? Today is currently the Saturday, March 7th, 2020. And you're listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston, and I am your grumpy, mean, abusive producer. So, Ed, why don't you get going?
Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, including the grumpy producer tonight. But anyway, I want to get into several things. As you guys know, I've been in and out of the hospital, and so I still have medical issues. Medical difficulties, and I haven't got them resolved. I don't know what the hell these doctors are doing sometimes, but it just depends on your position. But anyhow, I want to get into the real structure dealing with the native point of view that I've talked to a few of them. I've sent some stuff out, and then Senator Tim Knopp, if you are in Oregon, look him up. He's trying to put a Senate bill in to eliminate, or to freeze seniors' property taxes. But actually, I've got a bill that I've been pushing to eliminate property taxes by Oregon State Constitution and the Treaties of Oregon. Oregon shall not pay state and federal income tax or property tax by law. And this is the whole point, is reading what the damn law says compared to the lies you're lying to your children about. And I always love it when people tell me, I don't lie to my children. I always let them know you do too, because you believe in Christmas and Santa Claus. That's a lie. So when you're sitting there lying to your children and you say you're not lying to them when you are, it's very disturbing, because everybody goes, oh, the kids don't get lied to at Christmas and holidays. And yes, they do all the time. So that's really frustrating. Got to keep the lives going so we can keep jobs going. Jobs are more important than children's lives. Because even when children are raped, robbed, and pillaged, it's money. It's financial income for the corporations. And that's the real truth. And it disgusts me that people sit there and they claim these things but don't act on them. They lie to their children, and that's acceptable. So to me, that's disturbing. So let's get into part of tonight, what I'm doing, because I have got my papers. I'll have my basically opening statement that I'm running for Lincoln County Commissioner. I've got to finish that one up. I put a small press release out that I've got, but I haven't done my press release for the Lincoln County yet, which I'm going to do. So, because Steve Card from the News Times finally sent me email dealing with that, and so they're going to be freaked out when I'm putting out the lawful and legal terminology, especially for transportation for the disabled and elderly, because in Lincoln County, we want to know where the money's going. I have asked for the accountability of money. I've asked for I've served them Freedom of Information Act, and we never got it. So they lied to the children. They lied to you. Where is the money? See, and then they're saying, we don't have to tell you where the money is because we're God. We are your God, so you cannot question us. And that's exactly what your public employees claim. They claim that they are your God. So this is what's horrifying, that people get away with this stuff, lying to you and your children. So lying is acceptable terminology. Everybody does it. And that's the saddest point. Everybody does it, and then they say, I don't lie, but then it's proven when you do lie, nobody stands up and says, I lied and I admit to it, and so I have to make amends. And so, making amends, and I did have heart surgery 2 weeks ago. They put a stent in me, and that didn't work, because I'm still exhausted and that stuff, the same way as I am before I had the stent put in me in heart surgery. So I'm informed that I should have been, I could walk and do all this stuff, but I can't. So it is certainly frustrating with the medical society, what they're doing, or claiming what they do to the general public or for the general public. So, and remember, your birth certificate bond is an insurance bond. Yes, they're going to lie to you. I'm writing a letter to the city of Portland on that right now. City of Portland put out a newsletter, some of these public services, oh, if you're not willing to raise your taxes $200 a year, and then another $400 a year is what they're asking people to raise their property taxes. Because if you don't support and raise it, you don't care for children. You don't love the children. And I hate these people that do this stuff, and anybody buys into this goddamn bullshit should be executed. You British treason people should leave this country and go back to England. You don't have a right to your opinion. Opinions are like diapers and politicians. They need to be flushed down the toilet. Of course, I can't say that. I'm not elected a public employee at this point, so I have been in the past. And so that's the one thing. When I was elected a public employee on a local school committee, I requested the indictment with the school board for them indicting $35 million. I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt with a guesstimate of 150, but the state attorney general kept on attacking me with the Democratic Party. So this is what amazes me how, when you tell the truth, oh, you're the enemy. So it always disturbs me. So where are the real men and women? Where are the real men and women? All these people on the Facebook and on the internet claims, I'm a patriot. You don't even know what a patriot is. Go look at 1329 British Administrative Rule under common law. I'm common law. Common law means you're a British subject. Why don't you read the real laws? See, this is what's disturbing. People go, I'm a patriot, and they don't even know what a patriot really is. That started in the 1300s with the British government, that I'm a patriot under the king. So it's really frustrating when people sit there and they don't even know what these words mean. They sit out there and use these words, and they don't even know what they mean. And then they brainwash their children to follow this bullshit, and then they wonder why their children are getting problems because they lied to their children. So parents are the first structure of lying, and that is a fact. So dealing with that and your property taxes, I'm fighting on that in Lincoln County. And also, too, excuse me, I don't know if we have the link up or not, but you should type in, should nonprofit directors worry about personal liability? Any nonprofit agency is liable with the member of a nonprofit agency is liable with her or his property. That means assets, and you can file on that man and woman for their grandchildren's inheritance. Yes, you can. They won't tell you this, but that's what I'm saying to people, and I suggest to people. So I can't tell you what to do, but I can suggest that you actually read the laws and the statute codes and administrative rules, and when they sit there and say, for democracy or a person, remember, a person does not exist. A person is a slave to the crown, and anybody says, I'm a citizen, I'm a national. Well, you have no rights. You just admitted that the crown owns you, so you gave up your rights to the crown. And that goes all the way back to 1840s, and that is actually written, and you can read it in 1846. Excuse me. Oregon Administrative Rules Administration to the Crown. Because in 1846, all government agencies are owned by the Queen of England, not even your mayor, city council. They're owned by the Queen. They don't have authority. See, once they used to have respect 40 years ago, if somebody had a problem, you go to the king or queen of your county or your county commissioners or your city mayor, and if it was wrongfully done, it would disappear. But today they're saying, oh, we can't do that. It's not our jurisdiction. We have to let the law enforcement agency or the court deal with it. But when you're in a court, you're in an Article I court, a legislative court. You don't even know what court you are. You don't have no knowledge of what the law is. You don't even know why you put your own kids in trouble, especially when you write your kids off on your IRS taxes. I'm writing my kid. I give my kid a Social Security number, so then that way they're a British slave. Well, I need their $1,000 or $2,000 a year tax write-off. So that way I get it in my pocket so I go party and lie with my friends. So you're stealing that money from your children. You want your children to pay that money 20 years down the road in their income tax. And remember, those things could be put in the 1099 or 1004 income tax. So it's up to you to read the actual income tax laws and start being men and women instead of being slaves and lying to your children. It amazes me how I watch people lie to their children all the time. I mean, I just spent 3 weeks in the hospital and went through watching the doctors and all these people lie to other people in the hospital. And, you know, I spoke up and I didn't have a problem. Excuse me. You know, people know I speak up, and so does the doctor, so does the nurses. And I would say that, you know, 60% of the medical personality definitely knows the straw man account. They know that you sign your rights over to the state corporation. And remember, a lawyer could only represent a corporation. So that is Title 3, Title 8, Title 28, 3002. That's the British structure of the IRS. And so you are entitlement. If you go by that structure, you're entitlement. You have no rights. You gave your rights over to the Queen of England. And see, this is how cut and dry it really is. It's like I was talking to some people recently dealing with how to own their children and with the income tax and how it goes by with that. And the lawyers and attorneys can only represent a corporation. Lawyers and attorneys cannot and shall not represent a living man or woman, because a living man or woman cannot go to court. They have to go to a grand jury court. We have to file the criminal charges. And this is what I've been explaining to a few people. It's like right now I'm dealing with the Indian Nations again, and they're panicking because they're, you know, saying that, you know, these people don't have rights on their soil. I'm trying to get these people to comprehend that they need to file criminal charges on the administration and their stockholders. But it's so hard to convince people or suggest what they need to do, because I went through a couple people telling me, "Oh, that's not the way it's done." And then when I say, "Tell me how it's done," and they're quoting to me the format that you do through the court system. And I'm like, "Why do you want to go to a British court system when you're native? How come you're not filing for a grand jury? And if you're native, the only ones that could be on a grand jury is lawful bloodline natives. You don't want any public employee on a grand jury because they work for that said corporation. So you need to file a disclaimer on them." And they know they need to have a disclaimer on them. So I'll be writing up one to that tonight or tomorrow. Excuse me. A disclaimer dealing with elected and public employees in such a manner. But it's up to you folks to pass this stuff around, because if you ain't passing this around, you ain't getting nothing done. That's like in the state of Texas right now. They're going after the state of Texas, the American Bar Association, and the governor of Texas has wrote an administrative rule, so Texans cannot own firearms at all in their state. I try to notify some people in Texas, Gun and Guts and some of these other YouTube videos and stuff. And these guys are in the back pocket, man. They're making money off of these people because they're running their YouTube channels, and they donate $1,000 to $5,000 a year to them a year. So as far as they're concerned, they're going to bring out their anti-government message, anti-controlling message of government to the general public. I watch it on these videos. It horrifies me. I really witness this stuff in the videos that I watch. And that's what I'm saying. It's so apparent. Watch the videos what these people are lying to. A person does not exist. A person is an inanimate object. And I argue with people about this one. I'm a person. I have rights granted to me by God, by the king. And I said, okay, you got the Bible granted you rights. Where's the rights? Prove it. They can't prove anything. Because God grants no rights. That's the bottom line. God is a fictitious organization of the Vatican, the Queen of England. That's how they keep control of you. Simple. So, and that's the one thing you need to know with nonprofits. The directors, should be concerned, because directors of nonprofit agencies are liable with their homes and assets, literally. And that's to the children, to the grandchildren. You can actually file on that one to claim your assets. And that means any money that derives from that estate of the man or woman who's on that board goes to whoever files the criminal complaint. And you cannot see, people say, I'll file a class action lawsuit. Well, class action lawsuit in the corporation, you can do that, but if a judge dismissed, that means every case is dismissed, and you can never bring it back unless you rewrite the whole structure with a new heading, new title, and new circumstances. But, we can't tell the truth. You're not supposed to tell the truth to the children. And that's the problem. We have this problem where everything is going to the children. And these children today don't have a clue of what's going on. They think that socialism is government, and socialism takes away their rights, but they're so dumbfounded and dumbed down, and that's the whole point. They are dumbed down. And people say, well, I'm a natural person. Oh, my God. I'm not a person. I'm not natural. I'm not a British slave. Read the law dictionary, and or even read Williams' dictionary, Weber's dictionary. You go into Weber dictionary, you type up, legal and human, you'll find out they're one and the same. So you have to claim your bloodline and own your bloodline if you don't claim that. And that applies all the way back to the 16th Amendment, and, that applies all the way back to the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was the last one, and the 14th Amendment couldn't have been passed or ratified. The last one that was passed and ratified when there was a government in Congress was the 13th Amendment that says lawyers and attorneys and clerks cannot be in a courtroom. So, and that's the point. You want to file this stuff. When you're filing your instruments, you want to put the structure in where lawyers and attorneys cannot be in a courtroom. You have to put that a judge cannot be in the courtroom. And that is on FARA.gov forms. And remember, the FARA, the Foreign Administration Registration Act, is a nonprofit agency, and they put their OMB number on the website, what I have given out and what's on their website. And that is for your protection, to know that these people don't have a right to arrest you. Police departments are nonprofit agencies. They don't have a right to interfere with your life unless there's a victim. That means an injured party, injured man or woman. So, and, it depends on the animal, but most animals are not considered anything. They're disposable by the way administrative laws are. So they're trying to do this Animal Protection Act, which I don't get, but some of it sort of reaches out too far and criminates people that should not be criminated. So judicially, a person entitled such corporation firm. And so this is the one thing you got to remember. They are form. No different than a lawyer, doctor, or anybody else who has a form title. That's a title of nobility. And so it is very important that you read this stuff. And that is the one thing, and you go back in history, a natural person is under the Charity Commission Act of United Kingdom 8, Section 8. You can type that 8. Charity Commission Act, the British government, Section 8. So you can type it up because a human has no right to vote. See, that's the point that everybody keeps going, I have a right to vote. Nobody has a right to vote. You don't. Because you're considered a legal person. Persons don't have a right to vote when it comes down to it, but they count them, and this is how the Democrats are able to control the House and Senate. And their job is to control it and cause you problems. Excuse me. That is their job, to cause problems. They don't care about you. And once you start comprehending these men and women do not care about you, you'll get a lot further. But until you until you start going with this point that, these people care for me, they don't care for you. They're making $1 off you. That's how they make their paycheck. I always love when people say, these people love me and they care for me. No, they don't. Because they're not donating to nonprofit agencies. They're not donating and helping you make sure your kids off the website and out of the territories, because that's the point they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that the rights that you have. See, and if you knew the rights that you had, it would terrify you, because you didn't know how to stand up for these things, and I guarantee it. So, and that's the one thing, putting my candidate statement in. I'm putting the actual structure of the law in my candidate statement, including the birth certificate, the baby bonds, everything, because people have a right to know. So, and I mean, I know people have a right to know, but, people say, well, what's your chances? Who knows? Depends if people want to be educated or if they still want to be a former incorporated slave. Now, we do have one senator that's got a House bill in, a Senate bill, and that is to freeze the native taxes or the people's taxes today, similar like Garbus-Gann in California. But California is still working, trying to release and to eliminate Garbus-Gann bill, because back then, when that was passed in the 1980s, your taxes of state and federal income tax is based on a 1980 principle. It's not based on present day like it is today. So when you're paying your income tax, ask these questions. I'm encouraging people to ask these questions. Ask them where the funding is, who funds them. And just remember, when you pay state and federal income tax, it goes under Section 8 of the Vatican under Washington, D.C. Code. Your money doesn't stay in this country. And this, I argue with people quite a few times on this. People say, if I pay taxes, I'm here, this is who I am, but it doesn't mean nothing. So you got to realize what means something and what doesn't mean nothing, and they've already twisted this stuff so that way you don't know. And see, and then people go, oh, everybody's being called racism. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I'm just always curious where the grown-ups are. Men and women are to be as adults. This is the one thing, is that Oregon is going through this tax crisis. There is no opiate crisis. That was made up so that way these people can make income. And you got to realize all this structure around you is income taxes. And by law, income taxes are voluntary. And that is the one thing that you can't. You got to look at these things. This is the one thing I'm going through where I see that Lavoie's case was dismissed from the local court. That was the one thing that I kept on telling these people, the Bundys. The Hammonds, quit filing it under their administrative rule of the British government. You're the injured man and woman. You don't even know, and then you bitch because they dismiss your case. Then you want to go bitch to these general people and the general public. Go, no, they did this to me. They didn't do nothing to you, Hammonds. You didn't write the case that you were the injured party and the damage it did for Lavoie not being in your family. But you see, these are things that you could try to explain to people, but, most people want to believe in some stupid book called the Bible. I'm waiting to meet God, if there is a God. I don't see God coming up. And then they're trying to put this 1% service tax on the ballot, too, for the homeless. Technically, there's no such thing as homelessness in our country. The Indians weren't homeless when the English came over and invaded them with their Bibles and raped and murdered them with their Bibles, because the Bible says you can rape and murder children. Think about it. The Bible says you can do it. People get away with it all the time. So this is the one thing that, it drives me nuts. I've seen it. It's just disgusting what we're living today, that people don't want to get involved. And then when people get their cases dismissed, they wonder why. Well, you got to file as the injured man and the injured woman. The Lavoie case, they didn't file as injured man or injured woman. They filed as a corporation. Lawyers can represent only a corporation. Lawyers cannot represent a man, woman, or child. But this is the point of trying to explain this to people. And then everybody goes, oh, God says this, God says that. That's like, personal friendship, personal knowledge. Doesn't mean nothing. Person and personal is not a living man or woman by any court standards. But that's what I say. You got to try to explain this to people, and people start bringing in the Bible, and that's where they lose. See, it's that simple. I'm claiming that I have a right because the Bible says I have rights. Explain to me one place in the Bible itself where it says that you have a right. There is absolutely no place in the Bible that says you have a right. You don't have a right to food. You don't have a right to water. You don't have a right to shelter. But in our Constitution, it says that if there's no injured party and no injured, injured man or woman, then you can do anything you want. That's basically what it says. But if there's an injured man or woman, then you got a case. You got a criminal case you can file. But when you allow them to address you as a person or an it or a corporation, you have no rights. It's that simple. And I'll post up the law on the website tonight. I think it's already on the website, but I'll post it on the YouTube channel. You can actually read the law. It says you don't have a right if you are a person. You absolutely have no rights being a person. Oh, God granted me this right because I'm a person. There ain't no person that has a right. Only living men and women have a right, but you have to claim and you have to prove that you are the injured man or woman. And then you have to file it in an Article 3 court because your basic court is an Article 1 legislative court. Legislative courts, you have no rights. That's where a judge decides if he wants to have your court case or not. It's that simple. And that's the other point, too, is that you're an inanimate object, so you're giving up your rights when you don't file your court structure. And then when you file your court structure, and if you don't file that you are an injured man or woman, you have to pay the court fees. If you file that you are not an injured man and woman in their court system, or you file that you are the injured man and woman in their court system, then you don't have to pay court fees. It's that simple. But, people don't read. I put this stuff all the time for people to read. I email it out all the time. And people have their own opinions of what they come. But remember, opinions are like diapers. They need to be fleshed regularly. Opinions have no rights. You'll see court opinions from circuit court judges and stuff. They have no rights. And so you got to realize this stuff. Administrators have no rights. See, it's so simple when you look at the real facts compared to the fantasy the majority public wants to live by. I mean, I'm still having difficulties from the stents and heart surgery I went through. I was told, it's supposed to improve me. It didn't. So I have questions on that one. What, why, and how? So how do we solve the issue? Now I got to write up the arguments on it. So that's part of me doing it in the office when I'm running for office. And so these are one of the things I'm bringing up in office, and I'll be bringing it up too when I run for Lincoln County Commissioner with some of the bus stops, even at the hospital. There's no covered bus stops. So they want to make sure that you get rained on and you get cold. You get, that's the whole point. Sickness makes money. If you have a cold, fever, it's money. They don't want to cure the sick people. Sick people is an income. So, and then people say, oh, that doesn't work that way. It's like, snap out of your fantasy. You're living. It does work this way. The income, jobs are more important in your lives. That's like everybody keeps going, if you have an abortion, you're killing the child. Excuse me, the woman has the right to her body. The woman loses her right to the body. Man doesn't have a right to his body. Nobody does. So you got to come to reality. If a woman's body is her body and she has a problem, then you can nail her for it. So, it's amazing how these circumstances transpire. And you got to remember, they go by personality. So when you're using the word person, it's an inanimate object. So you look at the law, the legal points of view. And the legal points of view is what gives you your rights. The Constitution and the Indian treaties give you rights. The Indian treaties are the big factor that gives you rights. And a legal person has nothing. No obligation, no rights, no nothing. And when you don't claim them, you give up your rights. So, and that's why I always say, look at the structure of a nonprofit agency. And you can type in on the internet, should nonprofit directors worry about personal liability? Type it up and read the circumstances. So we provide you this information. We want you to read it. We want you to be educated and knowledgeable, and that's your responsibility. Your fault if you're not liable or responsible. So, and that's the point. It's like with this thing with the petroleum company, Hudson Bay, British Petroleum is in this country trying to take over your government again, saying that you don't have a right. And they're trying to violate the Snake River Indian Treaty of 1865. And they're getting away with it because the men and women ain't standing up to it. Because the Indians are so stupid because they've been so dumbed down in knowledge and education, they don't know what their rights are. They truly do not know what their rights are. So when they don't know their rights, this is the problem that they are living by. Try to get this stuff out to the general public and the natives. Fight for your rights. Stand up. You're the injured man or woman. Prove it. Your children are injured. They're stealing your children's future. Our children's future. So, and it comes down to simple things that are really simple. And we get into a couple other things here, and we're going to actually cut a little short tonight. But a natural-born citizen is explained. I do have the video. And this is the point that people got to realize. Natural-born citizen, or natural-born. I don't like using the word citizen, because citizen is a British terminology legally. But a natural-born native versus citizen, or versus national. Because citizen and national under Executive Order 2040 are enemy to this country. They are real enemies because they don't know their Constitution, they don't know rights, and then they say, I was born here, so I have a right. Just because you were born here doesn't mean you have any rights. So as the national citizen, the video explains to the general public, okay, and it says that in the structure, the forefathers of this country, who did come from other countries, who put their flag in this soil, and they came up with a new flag, basically is the red, white, and blue flag. But if you look in real history, it's the same thing as the British flag, technically, by the colors. So there's no what it means, and everybody's flying the war flag, so you want to go to war. So now watch this on everybody's Facebook. They got the war flag. They still want war. They still want war. So when are you going to comprehend when the war flag is your enemy, and, where's the peace flag? Where's the common sense of educating one another so that way the children are not at war with what they're doing today? You're educating the children to argue about abortion. I mean, it's like in Oregon, they're having these drills for the fire department, police department, where they got these kids faking, being dressed up as injured and all this stuff in schools. Let's say if they have a school explosion or threatening with arms in a school. So they're doing these experiments in school, these program experiments. Oh, we're going to have the kids act this way. Let's say if they got blown up, they're going to act this way. So then the bottom line comes down to is that they're saying that they need to act this way, but they're taking away the responsibility from the parents and giving it away. And that's the point we're living today. You're taking your responsibilities and giving away to a foreign identity, and that's the problem we are living today. So United States Incorporation is Corporation of the Queen of England. United States Incorporation is Title 28, and that is 3002. Don't be fooled by it. It's like reading what the law says and administrative rules say compared to what people are being taught to believe. And that goes back to their contract with the British government, and that goes back to the Vatican rules, the Treaty of 1214, 1215. Read the Treaty of 1213, 1212, 1214, 1215, the British treaties. And remember, your British government, the bar, is still England's own British accreditation registry to the King and Queen of England. The bar is still owned by the Queen. It's never going to change. So you can't change administrative costs when you know what they are. You can't go back in history and change these things when you're living it. And that is the point. You've got to stop living this stuff and start treating the Constitution and the treaties for what they really mean. Because you're not living in reality. Most people don't live in real reality. They really don't. And that's the saddest part about people today. And everybody keeps telling me, you got to go buy an estate. Estate stuff. When I read this stuff, people say to me all the time that they keep trying to tell me that I should file this way, I should file that way. And it's like when I read the circumstances of these things, I don't need to file their terminology because I'm not part of their system. I don't want to be a British slave. I don't want anything to do with the British government or law enforcement because law enforcement is not American. Once you comprehend that law enforcement and polices and all of that is still run by Scotland Yard, type in Scotland Yard Police Departments. They still run your city and county. It's a real fact. This is not a joke. This is not fake fairy tale land you're living. Once you start knowing what this stuff is. And once you put these things together. I mean, I watch these people always got to sit there and, come after and go after my talk show when I do my talk show on Saturday. And, so they do this. And now I'm watching it, with all these people coming out, what I keep talking about, bringing out the experience with the bar exam, with the bar attorney, and then, these people run around on my website, and then they're claiming it to their own groups. They just saw it. They just learned it. Which I don't mind being that way, but it's like what gets to me is not giving the general public the truth. I put this stuff out. I've been putting out this stuff for years. And then I've been watching this stuff on the internet lately with all this stuff with laws and stuff. And it's the stuff that I put out 5 or 6, 7 years ago. And now they're trying to claim it as theirs, what they've done. This is what they just found. So, it doesn't bother me, but the point is passing on the truth. And most people don't know the truth, and that's the point. If you are going by the Bar Association runs your municipalities. It's a guaranteed thing. I love it when, John LaCrone puts out, the same stuff I talk about or pulling out the same stuff that I've done. And, and that's the point. You got to claim your body. You got to own your body. Once you claim your property, then you can do things. And you have to claim, and people go, well, I don't have to claim my property. And then you wonder why you're in court. Because you say the state is owned by you. You don't have a right. You're claiming it is owned by you. So that is the bottom line that comes down to the circumstances here. And when it comes down to who owns you, how come you're not educating your children on this fact of the bar card? The bar card is a membership. It has nothing to do with your structure of this. What's going on, but you have to learn that either you're native and you have to talk as a native. And it's simple. You don't talk in slang. And when you write your address, you have to put your full address. And you claim as non-incorporated. If you don't claim as non-incorporated, you're incorporated. You're a bonded individual. So you have to see, wording is so apparent on how you word your structure of what you're putting in your statements. And people don't get how wording is so apparent. So, and that's the one thing too. If you go by the 1801 British Maritime Handbook, bar attorneys, we'll get that eventually posted up. I thought we did that once before, but we haven't got it. We'll get it up there. So, and that's one thing is if you don't claim and prove your bloodline, and this is the one thing I've had people say, well, Ed, how do you prove your bloodline? It's simple. How many generations is your family on the 48-state soil? Alaska and Hawaii is not part of the United States. Alaska and Hawaii under Title 28USC3002 is still owned by the Queen of England. See, it's like looking at these things. If you're born in Alaska and Hawaii, Alaska is no man's land. That's no title. And Hawaii is still the title of the Queen of England. There is no difference. And so it's comprehending and separating the separation of the real facts and the real truth. So once you start doing it, like I say, I'm a native. I don't sit there and claim, I'm an Indian native, which I could, but I'm not going to do that. I'm native. Because if I put a title of nobility, that means I'm liable. And you don't want a title of liability. That's the whole point. You don't want a title of liability. You get away from those points of title liability. So that way you're a free man or a free woman. If you go by this, and these other people out there on the internet keep trying to convince you, use your full name, use your legal name. Okay, look at the definition, what a legal name is online. I keep putting this stuff out, what a legal name is. And you guys need to read this stuff. I watch other people run with my stuff, and that's fine. I appreciate it. But, it would be nice if they actually gave you some credit and consideration. But, most of these people out there, they don't give a shit. They don't care about nobody but themselves. And they put themselves out, and like it's real. Like it was their idea. And this is the whole structure that gives to me that they're claiming it on their own talk shows when they read it. And this is the point. Like when you get a parking ticket, you want to ask the judge his authority on the parking ticket. You want to do the certified mail. You do not want to go to court and go, oh, judge, what is this? Only a dumbass and a stupid, uneducated fool goes to court and asks the judge questions. You want to put it in writing. In writing, so that way you know what it is in writing of the circumstances, and you put it in writing and you claim your rights. And that is proving your bloodline. People ask me all the time, how do I prove my bloodline? That I'm a native. It's simple. Go to the funerals, the death certificate of your family, your grandparents, your grandma and grandpa. Prove when they came to this country. Prove when they had liability of this country, and prove their experience in this country. That's a 48 states only of 1890 has rights. Or Ellis Island. Ellis Island, that means 5 or more generations, and that was part of the 14th Amendment. Read the 14th Amendment, it'll tell you it's 5 or more generations. They had to put it that way because they couldn't allow anybody to walk in and claim our land, our soil, our responsibility, our livelihood. And that's what so many people do. They claim our livelihood and claim it for themselves. And they say, well, I'm here. I have a constitution right. No, you have no constitutional right to food or water if you're not a native. Only immigrants have a right to food and water. And that's where people got to come to the real truth of what we are native, and what we are immigrant. And if you're an immigrant, you file it in court that you are an immigrant, and you have to file it in court that you're an immigrant, or you have to file in court that you're lawful bloodline native. But also, too, you do have to file in court your rights, but also, too, you have to file in what court? In Article 1 court is legislative court. You want to file in Article 3 court. Article 1 court, natives have no rights. You do what the Queen tells you, the British government, whatever that public employee is telling you to do. And that's the point that people got to realize, the circumstances of the truth and the meaning of these circumstances. So, and when it comes down to your own truth, you have to speak the truth. And that's where your honor has to come in place. If your honor is not in place, you have no rights. So anyhow, we're going to open the floor. I'm going to get into this, and then, like I said, I still got some posting. I got a press release I got to do, seeing that I am running for county commissioner and filing this in the recorded records. But that's the one thing, too, to realize that, if you're claiming that you are a citizen or national, you have no rights. Let's go ahead and open up the floor.
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody would like to add something?
Well, I'd like to add.
One at a time. First one, go.
Well, I'd like to. It's off subject. Okay, off subject a little bit, but I think everyone should watch the 1-hour video of the 5G coronavirus. It's kind of educational. It's a 1-hour video. 5G coronavirus.
I agree with you. I got it up, but Facebook blocked me for putting it up anymore.
Well, I don't know. I just pulled it, so I've got other people that have pulled it too. So anyway, that was all for me.
No problem. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, where can it be found?
It's off the internet. You just punch it in.
Well, why don't you email it to me, and I'll email it to the gentleman who had the question. So I'll email your video, and I have a couple that I have. I'll email them, all three of them. So email me that video, and I'll make sure that gets out there.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So we'll make sure it gets into your hands at that point. And see, one thing I want to bring up, in the state of Oregon I'm dealing with now, the state of Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, they are tripling property taxes. And people better wake up on this. And they're doing this in the state of Oregon. They want to double property taxes straight across the board. And Tim Knopf came out with a bill to freeze property taxes for senior citizens. And so I've got a message in to Tim. I plan on talking to him because I put in a bill 5 years ago. Actually, it goes back, Gary and I put one in back in 2001 on freezing property taxes because the Oregon State Constitution says if you're native, you're not to pay property taxes. You go online, read the Oregon State Constitution for once. And I encourage people to read this stuff. I talk to people all the time. Did you ever read the Constitution? Why would I want to read the Constitution? What does that matter to me? And I've heard this from hundreds, literally about 1,000 people in the last 2 years telling me, why would I want to read the Oregon State Constitution? And it's like, don't you get it? We have a treaty, and every state has a treaty with the British government. Oregon has a treaty of 1846 with the British government. And that treaty matters because in that treaty of 1846 with the British government says Oregonians, Oregon native treaties, cannot be charged taxes, including property taxes. It's on the website right now. Punch in Oregon legislators. Go to the Oregon State Constitution. It's right now today on the site. They finally put it up last year after I've been bitching on them for 3 years to put it back up because they took it off the Constitution structure of the Legislative Council. See, they took away your rights, put it up. Now they put it up, and people don't want to believe the truth. And that's like what's going on with Dexter Johnson. He's legislative counsel for the state of Oregon. Dexter Johnson himself personally said, you don't need a driver's license. But the cops are saying, if you don't have a driver's license, we're going to shoot to kill. And they've done that. They've shot to kill in this state, but those people who were murdered, nothing ever came in the newspaper of it. The media is controlled by the Democratic Party. Democratic Party owns 70% of your media stations in the state of Oregon. They do whatever Kate Brown tells them or the Queen of England tells them to do. They're owned by the Queen of England. Your media is. So it is frustrating. And just remember, too, and it's very simple that, what is that? An attorney can only represent a corporation. Attorneys cannot represent living men and women. Attorneys cannot even be in court. Says it. That's what I say. Read this stuff. It's so apparent you read. It's your responsibility to read this information. Go ahead. Somebody else like that something?
I just wanted to, you said Article 3 court. I thought the only Article 3 court there is Supreme Court of the United States.
No. You have to, the Supreme Court of the United States, when you go and file in the court paperwork, in an Article 3 court, you have to file and produce the judge of an Article 3 court. You have to make sure the judge took an oath to an Article 3 court, not the Article 1 administrative court. You have to prove the judge has a bond to an Article 3 court. That's your responsibility. They have them, but you have to prove that it exists. If you don't put and prove that and you have to prove that a judge has a bond to an Article 3 court. If you can't prove it, you're not in an Article 3 court. You're in Article 1 legislative court, and they don't want to have that truth out. Yeah, I do have that posted up, too, on new.org and Trackers, and it's all over the Facebook pages I have, and that is Recall Kate Brown. That is also, too, the Civil War of 1866, Lawful Bloodline Natives. That's also, too, on Facebook of New Oregon Trackers, as well as the United States Elected and Public Employees Oversight Committees. See, it's our responsibility to prove these courts exist, because you got to remember, these Democrats, these judges in these courtrooms, they don't want you to know the truth. You know, when you pay your state and federal income tax, I got evidence and I can prove it goes to the Queen of England. You know, I've been putting out the email, and you can type this in. Government employees laughing at stealing your land on YouTube videos. You know, they're laughing because the government, your attorneys and your sheriff's department, when you don't pay your taxes, they come in and throw you off your land. And remember, if they do a foreclosure on you, they need a warrant. They need a foreclosure warrant. They need to prove that you went to court on a foreclosure. They cannot sit there and say, you know, we can foreclose on your land and steal it. You have to file on that sheriff to prove that you went to court. If you never went to court, you file criminal charges on the sheriff stealing your land. That's your responsibility, because living men and women is the only ones that can file criminal charges. District attorney, lawyers, judges, nobody can file criminal charges but the injured man or woman. And you have to prove you're the injured man or woman. And that's the way it really works. And they do this stuff to people all the time that, you know, if you don't know your rights, they want to make sure you don't know your rights. You know, I always say raping children is money. They know it. If they're raping children, hey, they're making an income off of you. They know it. Raping children is money. You know, how simple is it? Because when you file on a court case, if you cannot prove you're the injured party, you have no court case to begin with. And that's psychological trauma. That's proving how they stole your land. That's proving the intent to steal your land. I mean, there's a lot of ways on these things what you have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. And lying is what they all do. You know. And then also, too, beside that one, we have the rampant, M-A-R-A-M-P-A-N-T, distraught, D-I-S-R-E-S-P-E-T, for the oath of office becomes a norm. And that's what they're doing right now, is they are running under the British government to prove that the British government, the democracy, is your norm. I mean, even you watch it on TV now. Hannity is a British subject. Oh, we got to save our democracy. What morons do we have out there saving a democracy? Because democracy is the British government, and Fox News now and all these people are saying we got to save our democracy. Democracy is the British government. It is not of we the people. Go ahead. Somebody else would like to add to this? But realizing democracy is the British government. Save our democracy. And if you don't believe me, go look up the actual word democracy, what it means. You know, and that's the one thing that people don't get, what democracy means. You know, democracy means that, you know, they can steal your kids, do anything. It says it right in the democracy structure. You know, so, I mean, you know, and it is this stuff, and I'll send this stuff out, and also, too, to make sure that you comprehend, it is clearly established principle of law that an attorney must represent a corporation. And that means that is your capital letter, you know, your capital name. You're a representative of a corporation, because when they use your capitals, we all know that you are a British slave. So, I mean, they get around this stuff so cleverly, and people just go along with it so simple. But then when it comes out to speak up, people don't want to stand up. So, but I'll email everybody what I got out on what I put together on the talk show, my press release. See, now I'm running for county commissioner now, and it has been filed. And so I will get my PSA out to the local papers in my county, and I'll get it out to the Oregonian. We'll see if they print it, because I'm actually writing the circumstances of how they steal taxes. I'm writing the actual laws of why I'm running, and the medical reasons too. I mean, I've gone in for heart surgery. It's supposedly changed what I'm supposed to do, but when I went in for heart surgery, I'm in the same boat as when I went in as I left surgery. So it just makes you wonder what, why, and how. So anybody else would like to add anything? Nobody's got any other thoughts they'd like to put into the conversation?
You should have your YouTube.
Go ahead.
The YouTube was sent on the 5G coronavirus, and it said you got it, so it's there.
Okay, let me go to my email and get it, and I'll get that passed to the other gentleman as soon as possible. And see, and that's the one thing too, is be careful when it comes to this stuff with the YouTube, with this coronavirus. They're getting this stuff out, you know, and they know they're doing it deliberately. So I got it, and let me go ahead and copy this and then get it on the channel, and I'll get that put out. But also too, like I said, I was shocked that I got blocked for emailing on my YouTube channel, I mean on my Facebook, when I only put up a couple things. That's just shocked the hell out of me. You know, today all of a sudden I'm blocked from YouTube again for putting up my structure for telling the truth. So it is amazing for telling the truth that they don't want you to tell the truth to the general public. So, okay, I got it. I will be passing this out. This was a video done on March 7th, 2020. So I'll get this passed out. And you got to realize, did anybody read the article today where the main hospital in China, where they have, where they said up to, I think it was 7,500 people in the hospital collapsed today?
Very understandable.
Well, yeah, you know, they had to get rid of the evidence.
That's the 5G frequency.
Oh, okay.
I understand it well. I know all about it.
Well, yeah, and that's what they do to your home, too, and they can do that to your heart because they can sit there and channel you and point that thing right to you and channel you to have medical problems, too. Because I always thought that when I had my first heart attack in 2013. Because I really did feel that, or believe that when I had my first heart attack. So I'm passing this on right now to the ones that requested it. It is being emailed. I'll try to post it eventually on my Facebook wall. I think I have this one already posted. But like I said, when I was trying to put the talk show up today, I got blocked. Because I started out and they didn't want the stuff, especially when I was talking about the taxes and the Queen of England. They wanted to block it. So it is interesting how these things truly happen to us. So the other gentleman, that's in your email, so you should have that. So so I got that out, and I'll pass some emails back to you, and then that way you can see some of the other stuff. I'm going to pass the talk show so you can see what I put on the talk show today, because this is the one thing people got to realize what's going on, what these people are really doing to us. It's all about money. And it's all about income. And so that's why I'm pushing the point that I'm running for county commissioner. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't matter if I win, lose, or draw. When it really comes down to it, I know that. But at least I'm getting the information out, so that's what's freaking them out. So, okay, I got that email to you. I got that email to the other gentleman. Anybody else got anything? Okay, with that, we're going to call it a short evening tonight, seeing at 6:03. And so I got that put out. We'll call it a short evening tonight. I don't have a problem with that. And like I said, please pay attention. And also, too, as you notice that it's hard to get bleach and stuff right now, when you get a break in this stuff, buy what you can to make sure you got medical supplies on hand. You know, be smart. You know, that's all I can say. Be smarter than the average bear. That's the way we have to do is protect ourselves. And I guess they're going to try to do another ammo structure so that way you don't have to, they're trying to go after ammo again. And that's the Democrats pushing that one. So I just ask people to be cautious and always stock up on your ammunition. And so I'm putting this on the virus on my Facebook wall as well. So anybody who goes to Edward Johnston on Facebook, I have the white teddy bear with the red rose. And so you can hopefully, let me see if it posts. And then, okay, let me see. Okay, it looks like it did post, so it posted, so it's on my Facebook wall on what the gentleman sent me on the 5G coronavirus. So just make sure you look at this stuff and make sure you got medical supplies on hand. You know, I mean, it's up to you to protect yourself. You cannot think that the British, what do they call that? A first aid administrative is going to come and protect you. Because if you're not familiar with, what do they call that? The Red Cross is owned by the Queen of England. Red Cross was first founded by the British government in World War I. So it is doing that, looking at this stuff and realizing what is really coming down the pike. So with that, if we got no other comments, with that I'm going to call it an evening, because I want to get out the press release that I'm running, so that way I can start seeing what papers are going to run this. And then also too, I just got this in city of in Texas. They're going to be building a 150-acre partnership. This is what gets to me. 150 acres of a new corporation going in that they're doing this, to protect you, they say, but they ain't doing enough. This one here is they're destroying Dallas, Texas for the financial gain of a few corporation leaders. So, this is on my Facebook. It was just put on my Facebook. So look at this stuff that's on my Facebook. I'll, copy it, send it around. But this is stuff that people need to pay attention, because, like I said, I know that the guy I'm running against, or I should say woman, his name is Bill Hall, but he goes by Claire Hall now. And I've known him for 30 years. We've done numerous talk shows in the past. And so the thing is that I'm bringing out is that he's a Democrat. So the only reason why he's protected is by the Constitution and the native treaties protects him to be gay, not democracy. Because as the Constitution and treaty say, no injured party, no property damage. It's cut and dry how this stuff really works, but, divide and conquer is what it's all about. And then if you haven't got it, I'll send you the letter from Sarah Connor O'Day, who put out dealing with the fraud. She was a former justice, and she wrote the structure and got the letter out when she retired, how the corporation was such a corrupt corporation, and the courts are extremely corrupted, far beyond that she ever knew. And so I have that from former Justice O'Connor, in her own words. So anybody wants that, send me an email. I'll make sure you get it. So with that, may the Creator look over you, may Mother Earth bless you, and Father feed you. Because without Mother and Father, we don't live, and without the Creator, we don't have life.
All right. Thank you very much, Ed. You've been listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnson. It is Saturday, March 7th, 2020. So, also, guys, remember, this coronavirus has killed maybe at most 100 people in America. The flu every year kills tens of thousands. They're hyping it up to freak you out so that they can control you by fear. Think on that.
Well, that's why I never get a flu shot.
No. And just think on that and pay attention. Keep healthy as you can. Other than that, deal with things as you deal with them. So with that, guys, we're going to see you next week. Y'all have a good week, and next week Ed'll have more stuff to educate us about.